good afternoon, good morning, whatever time of the day it is. This is Cleo in Boston, and I would just like to say welcome back to another episode of Breaking It Down with Boston. I am so excited. And I know, you don't have to tell me. I know I'm still in second place, but I've been getting some good reassurances that I'm almost to the first spot.
Yay.
But today, I want to welcome a dynamic lady to our platform. I am so excited to have her. I wanted to list off all her accolades and she refused. She said, Cleon, let me introduce myself. So I'm going to oblige, but I want you guys to help me to welcome Tara Carter to Breaking It Down with Boston. Tara, welcome.
Thank you for having me. You're sitting in St. Thomas. I'm sitting in Pennsylvania, but I'm a sister of Anguillan soil. I'm a practicing lawyer. I do live in Anguilla. I'm just on vacation and decided to have a chat with Clee today. I've been practicing in Anguilla for 18 years. I've trained in Canada. I practiced 1 year in Canada, and I'm now making my way, Clee, out of mainstream traditional lawyering, and I'm moving into my nonprofit women empowerment initiatives. I launched a nonprofit called Lead Her Network in Anguilla, and we're currently focusing on issues of self-care, issues of money management, construction, finance, you name it, all things women, all things empowerment. So that's what I've been working on.
And that's what drew my attention. I need to have Tara on this platform. You know, we started Breaking It Down with Boston because we wanted to share how we can empower each other, empower families to, number one, trust God more, because faith is the basis for everything that has occurred in our lives.
Oh, yes.
And to believe that we can change the financial landscape, not just for us, but for our children, and teach them about developing wealth to the degree of becoming not just financially free from for ourselves, but creating generational wealth, which is not something that we are accustomed of speaking about.
Yes.
We wanted to talk about real estate, but I got so excited, Tara, when I saw the direction. You know, I've known you for so many years.
I know, like this small.
You worked with Algie, you know, you knew the kids. And when I saw you, you know, you had your course on teaching financial literacy and helping us change the mindset, I said, I got to have Tara on.
Wow, I can't believe you saw that all the way in St. Thomas, because it started off just with an Instagram show on construction. And I'll tell you, Clee, as a lawyer, a lot of women fell into my lap with construction woes, like being taken advantage of, not understanding the industry, not being able to speak the language. And I decided that I wanted to empower women to be conscious about their money. Like if you're building a house, you need to understand what goes into the foundation. You need to understand even the very basic, your plans, your drawings, the size of your room. So when I started those shows in October, I had an expert come on, him and his daughter, both in the field. And then I realized from the buzz, there were like 80 people on at night, 90 people on at night, men included, that people were actually learning very important skills in basic construction. How do I draw who draws the plan? What size rooms do I need? And then I had to step back and realize, well, how am I going to be empowering people to build? You need money to build. I've been in construction for 10 years, and it is not for the faint of heart. And I'm sure it's the same in St. Thomas. I've cried. Yes, I've laughed. I've been depressed. I've had anxiety over those 10 years. And I said, you know, I got to step back and I got to actually teach people how to save, how to manage their money, how to approach lending institutions to ask for money, because you can't be timid in those processes. And I pulled back from construction and I went full force into money management and talking about the things that we don't like to talk about.
Bingo. The things we don't like to talk about. I can't remember one time sitting down and having a conversation with my parents. And a lot of times it's because they didn't know as much as we know today. And having one conversation with them about the importance of managing our money or preparing ourselves for retirement because it seems so far off.
Yeah.
And honestly, by being totally transparent, it was because I made so many wrong choices
Mm.
when I went to
Mm.
college.
Yeah.
When it comes to money, you go to college in the US, they offer you a credit card at the
Oh,
front of
yeah.
every door. You walk in every store, they offer you a store card and they give you 30%
Well,
off.
I'm in here fighting against Target. I'm up here just for a week, and I can't go into Target without spending $300.
Yeah, yeah. And then just think about you being a college student though, and you're
Yeah.
gonna spend this kind of money, and they say we're gonna give you 30% off if you apply for a store card today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
you
turned
get
them
so
down.
excited for
Yeah.
this discount, and you don't realize you're just digging the hole.
Yeah. And that happened to me, Cleon. Like we think it's North American, but when I moved back to Anguilla from college, I think that there was some profiling done by the bank. It was Scotiabank at the time. And I had a credit card. I had maybe a $2,000 limit. And they kept just sending me letters. You've been selected for an increased credit limit.
Yes.
And they kept taking it up until it went to $5,400. And I went in and I said, I don't want this much credit because this is a problem for me. If you give me this credit, I'm 26. I'm so used to being broke as a student. I'm going to use it. So I had to write them a letter and ask them to reduce the credit because it is a trap. And if you don't have discipline, it's a trap that's very easy to fall into. But it's like you
Very
say, like we have to be so conscious of it in our 20s because we lose so much time when we could have been building towards our future retirement.
bingo.
Yeah.
We could be building. And that is something I want to talk about today.
Mhm.
Because you have a lot of people, a lot of us who, we feel that because of where we are now,
Mhm.
that there is not much things we can do to get to where we want to be.
Yeah.
We feel that time passes by. And for me, um, I know for you as well, because I've known you for a while and I've followed some of the things that you've discussed on your platform, and I know that God's principles plays a role and encourages us to believe that we are not here to be in debt and we are
Yeah.
not here to struggle. What principles do you apply to your life that helps guide you in the decisions that you have made? Whether it's decisions you have to correct and get on the right path, like you did with going into the bank.
Yeah.
What has helped guided you?
So, unlike most of the Caribbean homes that we know about, I grew up in a home that we actually did talk about business and we did talk about money management. And it was interesting because my dad did not go to high school. He didn't go to college. He was of that era where they left school at age 13 and they went out to work. But I think he always had that entrepreneurial spirit. So, and we were always very collaborative as a family. So we sat down and we discussed things. So part of my upbringing has been always to collaborate with those who know better. So my parents would always try to get more knowledge. It's all about how the Bible says about getting wisdom. And what I've been telling people is that you don't know everything and you have to know when you don't know everything. And you tap into people that are on the success path that can share things with you. So there were things that my dad would learn from people that were older, good and bad, because you look at the mistakes that people make. And it's interesting that you tackled me on this topic today because I just bought this book in Barnes and Noble yesterday called The Psychology of Money.
I have it.
Ah,
I'm
I
reading
can't
it.
put it down, Cleon. I can't put it down. And I've
I'm
read,
reading it.
you are, I'm
I
reading it
am
now too.
reading that book.
That book is awesome. I'm only at chapter 5. I stayed up all night last night until like 1 o'clock this morning. My sister was like, why were you up? You know what? I'm really drawn to that book because it's really basic and it's well researched,
And the
right?
stories, bingo.
The stories,
Yes.
the real life stories about
Real life.
people that had and died without. And
Correct.
I'm seeing that now in my lifetime, where I know of older men of the old boys network that had and died without. And then I also know the story of my grandfather, who's your relative, who was a tailor. He raised his family sewing pants, and he died with enough money to bury himself. He died over the age of 80. He paid for all of his needs from sewing pants. He didn't inherit anything. He didn't inherit any business, land, or wealth. And what that book talks about, which I'm going to talk about that book for a while, it talks about your behavior with
Yes.
money. And that was the topic for my class that I did on my webinar. What is your relationship with money? How is your relationship with it? Some people want to be better with it, but they just are apathetic. And like you say, they just think that it's not going to be better anyway. So I may as well just, you only have one life to live. So let's just blow it.
Yes.
But for me, it's been staying close to my source of inspiration, which has been my parents, and looking at how they have implemented very prudent means of life. Sometimes too prudent on my dad's side, so too prudent. So sometimes I have to teach him the balance of living and enjoying while you're here, and how they were able to really build something that now their children and their grandchildren can have a cushion to run with and manage it as well. Because one of the things I try to teach my son is, yes, I'm working to build all of this for you to have a cushion, but you could mess that right up if you don't understand what is required of you to manage what you've inherited. So biblically, getting wisdom is a number one. Living contentment, no greed. Like these are all basic biblical principles. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And I think when you have to know when to stop. So if you've read a few of those chapters, it talks about how greed, and when I look at it in real life in Anguilla, like I have so many examples of men, mostly men, because they've been known to be the risk takers. They are now in their 80s, their 70s, and they're up for auction. They're losing their properties. They're dying with no money in the bank. I mean, you've worked in the court system. I do a lot of probate still.
Yes.
And for some strange reason, we've lost a lot of men recently. I mean, a lot of depression and ailments. And when I do their probate, these are men of high financial standing. When I get their bank letters back from the bank, it is really discouraging to see that they die cash poor.
Yeah.
And these are men that had money that passed through their hands. So I'm trying to target a younger audience, Cleone. I want to target people in their 20s because that's the generation that's really bought into this social media YOLO. You got one life to live. And I'm looking at them going to all these fits, and they've been beating me up because I've been preaching against Shein and impulsive buying and compounding of impulse buying. And I'm saying to them, if you buy 10 Shein outfits, like that makes no sense. Just buy one nice outfit that you can mix and match because it adds up.
And I don't think it hits them. Alexis is 24, and I've been on her because she loves to eat out. And every time I take a look at her credit card statement, food, restaurant. And I said to her, I said, Lex, you got to be, and she is getting better, so I'll give her that. But I think it's because I make a bunch of noise in her head. Because if you don't, you had an example where you think it's just $10.
$15, $10. Yep.
Correct. When you multiply that $10 a day, and you're doing this, let's just say Monday through Friday, forget the weekends, you're home, so you're not going to your favorite little spot to pick up your coffee and donut or whatever. And that's $50 a week.
Yeah.
And then that's 2 weeks, that's $100. 3 weeks, that's $150. 4 weeks, that's $200.
Yeah.
And then you multiply that by a year.
You get to 5,000.
Do you understand?
I showed that example, Clee, to some young students 2 weeks ago. And I told them that my youngest mentee of my nonprofit is 21 years old, and she just closed on her first land purchase. She bought her own piece of land. Her loan payment is $300 a month. So that's the same coffee and breakfast that you're buying that can be rediverted. Make your breakfast at home.
Bingo.
I love eating out, right? And I know that's where my vice is because I really don't like cooking. But I use that as a time that I bond with my son. And, I have other ways. I do cook at home. But when I do decide to go grocery shopping, I'm embarrassed because when I ring up the groceries, it's really what I would have spent to go out one night.
One night.
To frolic.
And see, and that's the thing. I had a conversation today with a young man whose mom has her own business and she cleans this office. And so he comes with her. He's 18, 19 years old. And we had a long conversation because I was telling her about a podcast and I'm getting ready to tape an episode and we were talking about money. And she proceeded to tell me, this young man goes and he buys shoes for $150, $180, and he works for her company. I said, honey, why don't you go buy a share for the company of whose shoes you're buying?
Yeah.
That's a Nike shoe. Why don't you buy
It's a depreciating asset. And I talked about that the other day too.
Yes.
Nice cars and nice shoes depreciating
The second you wear it, you can't get not
and
even
I'm okay for nice things, Clay, but just buy
I
one.
am
If you
too.
buy one nice thing, it's gonna last. Buy one pair of shoes. Like
I
I grew up with a
agree.
mom that needed just a black pair of shoes and a brown pair of shoes.
And we try to share those thoughts about those simple little principles.
Yep.
Starting a budget. No
Yeah.
matter how little you make, start
Yes.
a budget.
Yes.
You learn to, and that took me a minute because I figured, man, I gotta keep track so I don't necessarily need. And then
Yeah.
you realize you spin over
You
and you
spend
spin
more.
over
Yes.
because you weren't keeping track of how much you spent already. But if you really decided, I'm gonna spend $300 in groceries for the month, which we know that's practically impossible, but I'm trying to find an easy number. If it's a little young person, $300 in a month, and you don't keep track, when you see you reach 300, the next time you go to buy, you're gonna say, maybe I could wait. The month start next week. I don't really need this month. I can wait. It actually motivates you to make
Yes.
decisions that
Yes.
fall in line with your goals.
Yes. And that's so important because when I was 26, I went out. I had just started working. I think Algie was still working there. I was working with your sister. By the way, your sister was my number one. She's my son's godmother. I have to shout her out. Um, so I had a paycheck and I was still living at home. I was 26 years old. I was so used to being broke in college. That paycheck felt so good. Every month end, I went to St. Martin and I bought jewelry. I bought a piece, a piece. And then one day I was like, well, what am I doing really? Like, this is no goal in sight. And I called up this realtor and I said, I think I want to buy a piece of land. And even then, my dad was like, you don't need to buy land. I have land. And I was like, no, I want to have something that I'm obligated to, or else I'm just going to be spending money on clothes and all these things. And it was $300 a month. I still have the land, and like I told them, it didn't expire. It's gonna appreciate. I didn't have an immediate need for it. I used it to send a relative to school. I used it as collateral for other things, but it's an asset.
It's an asset. And we actually talked about that this afternoon with the young man too, because we talked about the car. I told him, I said, go back and look at that first episode. I talked to Aliyah them about this Infinity that this person drove, but he was parking it at a spot that said tenants only. And
For
I'm like,
rent.
why would you put
For rent.
why would you put that kind of money in a car and you
Yeah.
don't own a home? And you made a good point because even though your dad had property and you now have property, you want, in order for us to create generational wealth, our kids can't just accept what God provided for us to leave for them and be settled with that. You have to add to it.
You have to get your own.
You have to get your own and add to that
Add
portfolio.
value. Yes.
Add value to it. And then you teach your children, they're not just coming in to sit on what you gave them. You're
Yeah.
teaching them, if they have those principles, to add to it. And
Yes.
that's how you create generational wealth.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
of large magnitude. And I know a lot of people believe that that's impossible, but it's not.
No, it starts with educating. It starts with talking. Well, basic things. You got to at least be able to be comfortable talking about it. And I think as parents, we have to be comfortable talking about the mistakes we've made also. Because my dad was open enough to say, I made a bad move at the time when I did X or when I did Y. So we were always involved in the discussion. So you got to be comfortable talking about the good and the bad because they'll learn. So, for example, one of the big mantras that my dad has is he doesn't do partnerships with anybody. And that's something he would have learned a long time ago, but that's very important for me because, for example, in my legal work, when I'm putting partners together, I remember the old school things in my head from my dad saying, a partnership is a leaky ship. It's not going to work. So I always like go into it with worst case scenarios. This is not just sibling and even siblings. Like I always try to urge people to really try to stand on your own and be independent. Go to the bank for financing because you don't have the same work ethic. But these are things that I would have carried on from learning early principles.
Yeah.
So educating is important. And what I told the students that I spoke to recently is that our school system has failed our children in the curriculum. I don't know about St. Thomas, but I was a business student in high school. I did principles of business. It was all theoretical. It was taught by people that probably never ever started a business or understood business, and it didn't bring any practical sense to bear. Right?
To it, yeah.
We need to understand business. We need to understand losses, profits, operating costs. working the numbers out,
And
But
if you look at that book, it's telling you that the decisions you make comes primarily a lot from what you were taught or what you knew or what you didn't know.
Yeah.
Your relationship with money,
yes,
good or bad,
yeah,
then guides the steps that you take in the way you live now.
yes. But we can break generational as well,
We
because
can
I
break it.
believe in breaking generational.
Absolutely.
I don't want to
Absolutely.
call it curses for this, but it really is generational patterns, generational behaviors.
Correct. I
Because
agree.
we need to learn what not to do as well if that was a generational thing.
And that's why we have these platforms, because we're telling people it doesn't matter where you've been. But for me, truly, if you trust God and you decide to start implementing changes
Yes.
in your life based on new information that you've learned and the way you've grown, you can make the changes and move forward in a different direction.
Yes. And
And
that's the
then,
getting wisdom. That's the getting
bingo.
wisdom.
And then you're able to share it with your children, your nieces, your family. Now, I know you and I are, and I want us to have this discussion on camera because we've been agreeing on everything, but we have a different view when it comes to, I said to you right
Credit.
before, credit cards versus debit card. And I know you're a debit card girl.
I'm debit, and I'll tell you why, because I got into trouble with credit. So now I'm okay with taking credit from institutions, right? And I always tell people that are timid about approaching banks. I've been going to the bank with some of my young mentees and teaching them how to ask for money, how to qualify, how to apply, and the steps they need to take. So I'm okay telling people it's okay to take debt, reasonable debt, debt that you can service, calculate your debt service ratio, and understand that you're not hanging yourself every month.
Mhm.
But where I got into trouble, and I still am peeling myself out of it, and it's not bad. I had a credit card limit of 5,400, and I maxed it out. And then when I maxed it out, so I'm not all things perfect with money. I maxed it out, but I started doing construction at the same time. So every time I wanted to deal with the credit card, I just said, let me just leave the credit card and I will deal with it after I'm finished building. So I'd only like put some money on, and never really like cleared it because I'm so afraid that if I clear it, I'm
You're
gonna
gonna use it
spend it
again.
all again, and the interest is crazy. Like I want to clear it and just cut it up, but I need a credit card. But it's all a behavior thing. I don't want to impulse buy. So I promised myself when I'm finished my construction, I have to give attention to clearing it. But I don't ever want to add up the cost of having that debt because of the interest being 15%. I should have just taken a loan, paid it out with a loan that's a lower interest rate, and just condition myself not to get into that mess. It's something that I've paused. I spent all these years doing construction and, dealing with that financially, and I've just paused it, but it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea because of the interest. So it has to do with your discipline. So if you're disciplined enough and if you trust yourself, I don't trust myself yet to clear that credit card. I really don't. So I know, but I'm disciplined with not seeing my account go down. So if
Right.
I see my account going down, I can talk to myself and say, what are you doing?
And see, that's a really, I think people watching this will gravitate to your honesty and to mine, because I laid it out when I first started this and how bad I was. But I'll tell you what my view is on credit versus debit cards.
Okay.
Now, not even just credit, but
Credit
credit
card.
cards
Let's
versus
see if you'll
debit
persuade
cards.
me. Let me hear this. Maybe I'll go pay my
So,
credit card off.
so number one, because the interest rate is so high, my daughters, I tell them they're not to use their debit card for any purchases. Absolutely none.
Okay.
Because if you're gonna use your debit card, just hear me out for a second. If you're gonna use your debit card, which means that they're pulling the money directly from your account when you use it, and you go into the store or some establishment and you have a purchase that's $500, and you have the $500 on your debit card from your account because it's coming from your savings or your checking, and they're gonna pull that money, then it's done, you get your product. I tell them you don't ever do that. Instead, you have a credit card, because one of the first lessons, so you're gonna go back and look for this lesson on my account.
Okay.
It's called prosumer, being a prosumer.
Okay.
That's where you're not a consumer, consumer is we just consume, we just buy, but we're prosumer where we're making our money work for us and we're getting something back every time we spend $1.
Okay.
Our money works for us. So you're gonna take now and you're gonna use your credit card, but it's a credit card that gives you points.
Rewards. Okay.
Points that goes to travel.
I got those.
Points that gives you cash back.
Yes.
Or points that give you free gas.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be, you have a credit card that gives you points. You're gonna go to that same establishment, you're gonna use your credit card, and you're gonna pay that $500, and then you're gonna go home the next day when you see it hit your account, and you're gonna go to your debit, your checking account,
and pay it.
Link it and pay it.
So that's what I do, Cleon. So we actually do agree.
Okay then.
We do agree, but
so you gotta stop telling me you don't agree.
But with the caveat that I have to still adjust my behavior so that when I clear that credit card, it's almost like I'm treating it as a debit card.
Correct.
Value.
Correct.
Right. But so right now, that's what I'm doing.
Good. Your credit card though must give you something back.
Yep. I get 2 free flights every year. In fact, I'm going home next week from Philly direct to Anguilla, and I paid $40 for me and my son. So
beautiful.
It's working.
That's what I'm telling people.
Okay, I'm with that.
Yes, we have to make our money work for us.
But the danger
it's discipline.
We have to be disciplined that we know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we're doing.
But if you're that disciplined to use your debit card because you know the money is being pulled automatically, then you should be disciplined enough to use your credit card and then just go pull it yourself and pay it.
No, I buy my furniture, I do all those things.
Everything.
So I kind of top it up. So it's almost acting like a debit card right now.
Correct. Okay. But the key for that, in addition to a safety part of it, is that if you have a debit card and someone hacks it and they pull money from your account, you have a hell of a time, if any, to get it back. But if someone charges something on your card and you didn't do it, you call the credit card company, you open a claim, they take it off right away. And after they do their investigation.
I got you. I just got to work on that little piece. So we got to make sure when we teach that piece that we understand that they need to know that they have to be disciplined. It's not.
You have to be. And if you're disciplined enough to use the debit card, then you are disciplined. You just got to make yourself do it.
Yep. So I got to do that. That's going to be my goal next. So I'm almost finished with construction. 10 years, 2 buildings.
Tara, I'm on year number 4.
Yeah.
We are in building right now, and I mentioned that on our last episode. This is year number 4 because I believe that the most busiest people in St. Thomas has been construction workers from COVID.
I've heard that you guys are busy.
It's crazy. I'm on year number 4, but we're awaiting our occupancy permit and our WAPA permit so we can get our meters.
Okay.
So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and I'm praying.
Congrats.
But
it takes patience and prayer, Cleo.
Listen, it takes prayer.
Prayer and patience. And I've had a lot of testimonies throughout where I'd wake up on a Friday and it's time to pay the workers and the money's not there. And I always play this Tamala Man song, God Provides, every single time. Like, I mean, that's what I believe always. But sometimes, even though I believe it, like my dad still has to say, what's wrong with you? Don't you always see? Like, I believe it, but I'm still kind of like, is it going to come through? And I just find myself, I always just lose myself in that song and I just believe it. And it always, always comes through. Absolutely. But I want people to understand though that there is a requirement. Like you have to abide by the word. You can't just say, oh, God's going to provide and then nothing happens. He expects that you have to do the work as well. Like
because we have faith
in your lap.
We have faith, but then we realize that faith is more than what we speak. It's more than what we think. Faith is what we do. We have to put that action. You know, he says that we want to be not just hearers of the word, but doers of the word. So we have to put it into practice. But when we do, our life could change. So if nothing else from this conversation today is that it doesn't matter where we are. I mean, I'm talking to this dynamic lady who's been doing construction, who's been teaching a financial course, who is an attorney for 18 years. And she's saying, I've struggled. I've shared mine. I've struggled.
Oh, no, I cry, like cry real tears. Like I've left the hardware I'd go down and my dad, he's been doing some of the work for me, and he would say, go pay a bill. I left the bill down there at the hardware for you. I've left the hardware and just pulled over and just wept like, oh my God. And I called my sister and I'm just not gonna make it. This is all this money. And you just gotta like pick yourself back up because it's scary, but it doesn't come easy, but the reward is so great when you really push
Mm.
yourself. And what I've been telling my 20-year-olds is that you got to do it now while you're able to.
Yes. And don't get us wrong, not because we're stressing on the 20-year-olds and the 22 and the
Oh yeah, no,
23
it's
year
not
olds.
too late.
It's not too
No,
late.
it's not too late.
It's not too late. And educating yourself, it's so crazy. We did not, before Tara mentioned that book, The Psychology of Money, we
Yeah,
had
I know.
not
I just picked that up yesterday.
mentioned that book.
I
And
can't
I've been
believe
reading
it.
that book. I'm a slow reader, so if I read for too long, I fall asleep. So I
Yeah.
got to read in pieces. But
No, I
it's
picked
a
it up
tremendous,
yesterday.
tremendous book.
And this is how the spirit moves. Nobody recommended that book to me. I went to Barnes and Noble. I was looking at all the personal growth books, and something about it just jumped out. I hadn't heard about it before. I'll tell you the one book, though, that changed my money mindset when I was 26, and it was recommended to me by Dr. Lowell Hughes, well-respected physician in Anguilla. We always have these kind of talks as well. And from in my 20s, we'd always have those talks. And he recommended this book called The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach.
I saw
And
it,
there's
but
another one that's called Start, like to the effect, start late, finish, like it's okay starting late. I read that book and that gave me some really good fundamental principles in my 20s. I read it about 3 times. I bought several copies. And a few weeks ago, I tagged him and DM'd him and just shooting in the dark. And I was like, dear Mr. Bach, I just want you to know that you changed the money mindset of a young woman in the Caribbean at age 26. And now I can pretty much like semi-retire. I can retire if I want, and I'm 43. He came back and he messaged me and he said, oh my goodness, look at how manifestation works. He said, just yesterday, I was thinking that it's the 20th anniversary for the book, and I want to hear stories from people. I can't believe this.
wow.
He
Look
gave
at
me his
God.
email privately, and he wants me to email him my story, but I hadn't like gotten into the zone to email him as yet. He reached out again and he said, did you send me the email? And I was like, I
Look
just want
at
to go into
God.
the zone. I'm going to do it this week. And I told him, I said, I just want to get into the writing zone to really tell you how those
How powerful
principles,
it was.
yes,
Yes.
the latte effect, which is buying little things that add up, which is what we talked about, paying yourself first, which is
Yes.
saving an automatic 10% from your salary, no matter how small it is, even if it's $50.
And Tara, you hit it on the nail. We said this before on this podcast. I told Aaliyah them, for us, we give 10% for tithes and offerings.
Mhm.
And we live off of, I think it was 20, like you add up that 100, 10%, you pay yourself. Like
Yep.
people believe that because you pay yourself, that's a problem, or that we should be last. But you got to put something aside
Yes.
always,
Always.
always. It doesn't matter
How
the
much?
amount.
Yeah. And people feel uncomfortable putting aside a small amount. I had a young lady reach out to me and she said, I'm not a very visible social media person, but I've done a lot of savings for young women. I have little envelopes at my store and they come in and they give me 50 and 60 and she takes it to the bank where they can't touch it. And she said by the end of the year, they have 5,000 in their account and they're blown away because every little bit adds up. And some people feel like if I can't save 100, it doesn't make sense. Of course it makes sense,
Yes. And I
right?
had a guest on. Her name is Denise Turnbull, and she is a business teacher at Charlotte O'Malley High School, and she does that with her students. She
Yes.
actually, they come in, she have a whole folder with
Yeah.
different envelopes for each child, and they bring
Okay.
money, and she tell them that if they reach a certain amount of money, she's gonna give them
Uh,
something as an incentive for hitting
yeah.
this goal.
Wow.
And at
Yeah,
the end
those
of
are
the
the things
school
to
year,
teach.
these kids now know the importance of saving, and
Yes.
they're able to take that money and they have their accounts, but then they're motivated to add to it and to
Yeah.
continue. Believe it or not, she is a current teacher that's doing that
Wow.
exact same thing.
Yeah.
So
It's
we don't realize the
education,
little things that we can do
education and impact.
that can help these children see the importance
Yep.
of growing financially. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter that we didn't have it. I said something a long time ago that I heard someone say, We are so busy trying to give children what we didn't have, but we don't realize that it's even more important to teach them what we didn't know.
Yes.
And that has stayed with me.
Yeah.
And Aaliyah and Alexis thinks that I make everything a lesson, but it doesn't matter what topic we are on.
Yeah.
What topic we are on. That's my alarm.
That's
What
okay.
topic we are on, I can find a way to explain to them why something needs to be different or why it's important to make little changes.
Yeah.
Little changes.
Yeah. Small things, small steps.
They add up.
Yep.
And that is what we want to say today. You know, Tara will definitely be back on with me again today,
Thank you for
another
having
day. But
me.
I want you to know the importance of saying we can be. We're helping you get the information. Last podcast episode before, I talked about the lessons that I learned from Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I got that on my bookshelf too. I got to read that one. That's on the list. That's on the list.
And I talked about some lessons from the first 5 chapters
Yeah.
about whether or not, you know, working 8 to 5 Monday to Friday or investing and making your money work for you. That's part of the prosumer mentality.
Yeah.
Making money while you sleep.
Yes.
Because the minute, whether you're a lawyer and you have to go into your office 24/7, 7 days a week, 5 days a week to make money, you want to get to the point that when you're sleeping, your money's still doing something.
Yeah. And honest, before you leave, Cleon, the thing that I know it's going to be similar in St. Thomas, we need to make sure that we are okay with that. I think that we have this cultural feeling that there's some shame or disgrace or, there's a condescending kind of approach to think that you want to do better. Who do you think you are? Look at her. She thinks she's this. It's okay to want to do better and to it doesn't make you materialistic because you want to build and because you want to invest. And why are we working? We want to enjoy life and be comfortable and be able to afford the things that our forefathers couldn't afford. There's no shame in that.
And I tell people all the time that I'm only now starting to get more into my word in terms of, I've gone to church all my life, but I'm starting to internalize the scriptures and really wanting them to apply. And I feel that when God says that we shall lend and not borrow, he meant it.
Right.
I feel that when he says, I want you to prosper as your soul prospers, he wants us to prosper when we get to heaven.
Yeah.
He wants us to prosper when we are
And I
here.
think from the church, we grew up feeling like that was not what God wanted.
It was bingo.
Like there's this confusion about what modesty and contentment really
satisfied right where you at.
Yeah, I don't think I don't subscribe to that.
I don't either. So
No.
we are right on track together. And I'm gonna and when we come back on another episode, we're gonna have another follow-up one, maybe after this one. But one of the things that I had to get into my children's head is that a bank, and I'm gonna just leave it on that because I don't even know where you stand on it, but we're gonna have another discussion, is that a bank is not a place to get wealthy.
No.
It is not.
No.
Woo, we 2 for 2.
No.
A bank is not a place to get wealthy. And I gave the young man today the example that in December, if you put $400 in a bank in December 31st, thereabouts, and we're now April, what type of interest do you think you would have gotten with the interest rates that we have now, which is non-existent?
I saw in my account today, I got a whopping 63 cents.
63 is good. But if you got, and I know that was on more than $400.
Exactly, I got 63 cents.
Okay, so I did this, and I mentioned it before. One of Aaliyah's favorite places to eat is Chipotle. So for her birthday is December 11th, and Christmas is exactly 2 weeks after. So this past year, 2023 for Christmas, I gave her $200. But she don't need my money. But instead of giving her the $200, I bought $200 worth of Chipotle stock. Chipotle stock at the time was, I think, $2,700 per share. I put $200 in it. And then when Christmas came around 2 weeks later, I gave her $200 and I put that $200 in Chipotle as well. CMG is the ticker symbol.
Okay.
Today, when I checked it, I don't know how it ended up because the market has been bad the last couple of days. But today, when I checked it, that $400, because Chipotle is now $3,100 and something dollars. That $400, if she had to take it out of the market today, she would be taking out $555.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's no way you're gonna put $400 in the bank in December,
I know.
and then 4.5 months later, you're gonna get $155 extra on
Yeah.
it.
No.
So a
No.
bank is not the place to get rich. It was equally as important as our parents used to do back in the day and just trade under
Put
the
it under
mattress.
the bed. Yeah.
Yes.
No.
You get the
And
same
it's not
interest
even a
that way.
safe place anymore either.
It's not. It's
No.
not. So we're
We
gonna talk
definitely have
about
to have
those
part
things.
two. When we have part two, Cleon, we got to talk more about what options there are for us, especially in the British Caribbean. In the US, it's a lot easier for you guys. We don't have a lot of investment opportunities. It's either, as I did in real estate and concrete, or in the bank. And I wish that we could be a bit more diverse in what people are able to do with their money to make their money work. So it'll be
So we will
interesting to see
definitely
what we
have that
can
discussion.
explore.
I'm excited. I'm
All
excited.
right.
But Tara, I thank you. Thank you for taking the time and joining me today. I look forward to our part two. And I'm just excited. You know, hopefully your episode is gonna push me past my child and I could be for one Boston, you know, but we're gonna get there. But thank you so much.
We're doing a good work here. So
Listen, and it's gonna keep getting better because
yes,
as we learn, we share. That's
yes,
the value of information.
yes,
Information is meaningless if we keep it to ourselves.
yeah, exactly.
So everyone
Listen,
listening, I
I'm
want
full
you.
time. I'm full time on this now, Clea. I have to tell you, my son said, he said, Mommy, are you gonna start to make money from this? Because this is taking up all your time. And I said, no, this is doing more for me than what you think and can imagine. So
We're gonna change lives with the help of God.
yes,
We're gonna change lives. We're gonna empower people to trust Him a little more, to believe that what His Word says is true, and
amen.
then we put Him to the test. We put Him to
Amen.
the test, and know that He wants us to be blessed, not just for ourselves and for our families, but just so we could be a blessing to the people He
Others.
put in our path.
That's right.
And that is important, to be
Yeah.
His hands and feet in this earth. And we can't do that job properly if we ourselves are not in a position to help. You know,
Amen.
it's one thing to say if you see someone struggling, you know, I'll pray for you. But it's another thing when you could say, "Here you go, God bless you," and then then they realize, "Wow, God walked through this person to really be a blessing to me."
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we want. We want to share information. We want to empower you to believe that change is possible. And if you make the decisions, the small decisions, you know, it has a thing, how do you eat a lion, an elephant, one bite at a time? It's just
Mm-hmm.
one step at a
Yeah.
time, but
Yeah.
change is possible.
That's
So for everyone that is watching, I want to thank you again for walking on this journey with us. Don't forget to please share the link to this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video so that we can get those numbers up and get it reaching more and more people so that we're not just changing our life, but we are changing the people that God put in our path as well, family, friends, and everybody else. So until next time, thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you, and I love you.
Thank you.